Cyrus traveled to the world of Harry Potter, thinking that he was waiting for brilliant magic. However, he replaced the soul of Voldemort in his diary and became Tom Riddle.Cyrus. It's broken, I've become Voldemort. Voldemort. Oh no, I'm a double. During the days spent in the diary, Cyrus kept learning and digesting Riddle's knowledge, waiting for the opportunity to come back to life. Until the summer of 1992, Ginny Weasley wrote for the first time in her diary, "Internal investment has passed, welcome to invest. I learned from the lesson of the previous book's failure in writing, and this time I have prepared the outline, strengthened the main plot of the protagonist and sworn never to end it." Keywords. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Harry Potter. Chapter 1. Cyrus and Ginny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Silver-gray memories flow in the dark space, like shallow moonlight shining in the mist of dawn, emitting a faint light. Cyrus looked quietly at the unchanging scenery before him, even though he didn't know how long he had spent here, his heart was still difficult to calm. Because he had crossed into a soul, no, not even a complete soul, just a fragment with some memories. The owner of this soul fragment is none other than the famous Dark Lord Voldemort. And it is the residual soul of Tom Riddle, who was only 16 years old, from the Horcruxes he created during his student days. However, now, due to his travels, Xiao Tang's consciousness no longer exists, and this remaining soul has also been replenished. To be honest, turning into a soul weapon is quite explosive even if it is placed throughout the entire crossing realm. The male protagonist of online novels, Cyrus, who suffered various humiliations and even life and death crises at the beginning, has been seen many times in his previous life, but it is quite rare to find a way to resurrect him as soon as he travels through time. What's even more helpless is that he, trapped in his diary, can only passively wait for the beginning of the plot. If it weren't for his ability to recall the magical knowledge Tom Riddle learned during his school years, he would probably have been bored to the point of going crazy in a lonely space. Slowly flipping through his memories, Cyrus couldn't help but marvel that Tom Riddle was indeed a genius. Undoubtedly someone who can become the Dark Lord. They have already mastered almost all the magic knowledge in Hogwarts courses in 5th grade, even mastering a lot of black magic in the Forbidden Book area. At this age, ordinary students may still be restless in their adolescence. In fact, most of the wizards who truly left a lasting mark in history are like this. Dumbledore and Grindelwald wanted to change the world during their student years, and in their later actions, under the program they jointly formulated, Grindelwald almost overturned the entire wizarding world. Compared to that, Voldemort's pattern is indeed much smaller, but his talent is not inferior. Cyrus digested Tom Riddle's magical knowledge, and he had experienced countless days like this, but today seems to be a little different. The silver mist was stirred, and the black ink drifted down like a faint wisp of smoke, falling into the silent memory and slowly blooming. August 19th, sunny, the handwriting ends here. Cyrus stood up with a swoosh. In front of the dilapidated desk, Ginny Weasley, who had originally planned to write a diary at her desk, looked at the blank diary in surprise. All the words she had just written had disappeared. On the yellow diary, apart from the handwriting printed on the cover and the blurry name, T.M. Riddle, on the back of the cover, there is no second word. T.M. Riddle. Ginny has never actually heard of this name before, but it's not surprising because the textbooks she uses are all second-hand. As expected, this person named Riddle is the first owner of this diary. But no one has ever told themselves that this is a magic book. This innate Gryffindor couldn't help but feel a great curiosity in his heart. The things she experienced this summer really excited her. First, her admired Harry Potter moved into her own house, then she received an owl letter from Hogwarts. Now, there is actually a magic diary hidden in the second-hand textbook that she used to dislike. So she picked up a feather pen, dipped it in ink, and continued to try to write. Today is a special day. A short half-sentence was written on it, but the ink was immediately sucked in as if it had been written on a sponge, without even leaving any scratches. Ginny opened the page in surprise, but the back of the paper was also clean. Where did all the ink go? Little Ginny stared with bright eyes and a puzzled expression on her face. At this moment, a horizontal line slowly appeared on the empty paper, or rather, a more appropriate greeting. Hello, may I ask if anything good happened to you today? Ginny was startled and hurriedly threw away her feather pen, jumping to the side. She looked at the diary with a face full of fear. Every child growing up in a magical family inevitably hears a warning. Never trust anything that can think independently, unless you see where your mind is hidden. This is just like Muggle parents telling their children never to trust any stranger who tries to approach you with candy. A magical item that can think is highly likely to be evil. Maybe I should tell my mom about this. Ginny couldn't help but think. This thought almost occupied her brain, but she hesitated to take action. Instead, another thought slowly began to grow. The diary was hand-picked by my mother at the Lycan bookstore along with those textbooks. If it was really dangerous, then my mother wouldn't give it to me. Perhaps I can keep it or see what tricks it has. If there really is any situation, it's not too late to tell Mom again. As a typical little lioness, Ginny never lacked courage and curiosity. She bent down to pick up the old feather pen and slowly walked back to the desk. The line of greetings had not yet disappeared, as if waiting for her response. Who are you? These three words, along with the greeting above, flickered and disappeared from Ginny's sight, followed by another line of handwriting. My name is Tom Riddle, and it's a small memory left by the owner of this diary. Where did you get it? After seeing this sentence, Ginny did not immediately answer. Instead, she opened her mouth and whispered, Harry Potter, realizing that what she was saying was still normal language rather than boring limericks. She breathed a sigh of relief and continued writing. My mother bought it in the second-hand books section of Lycan bookstore. The second-hand books section of Lycan bookstore. So, are you also a student at Hogwarts? The person in the diary seemed very surprised, as if meeting a stranger who was not familiar with him but closely connected. And the word, also, gave Ginny a huge sense of familiarity. I'm just starting first grade this year. Are you also a student at Hogwarts? I used to be, but later I graduated. I never imagined that the diary I left would fall into the hands of the little wizard at Hogwarts. Perhaps it was also fate. By the way, I haven't asked for your name yet. Ginny hesitated for a while before writing her name. Jennifer Molly Weasley, you can call me Ginny. At this moment, another line seemed to appear in the diary, but before she could read it, she was startled by a knock on the door and closed it with a snap. Ginny, it's time for dinner. Are you asleep? I've called you several times. The voice outside was Molly Weasley. No, Mom, I'm coming right now. The new book sets sail, and the internal investment has passed. Rest assured to invest. Seeking a wave of collection and follow-up reading is really important to me as a young author. Oh. Chapter 2. Cyrus Resurrection Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cyrus could not see any external scenery or hear any sound, but he could feel that his diary was rudely closed, which made him a little anxious. Ginny won't be discovered, will she? He doesn't know when Tom Riddle started communicating with Ginny Weasley in the original work. However, he believed that as long as Ginny started writing any word in her diary, Tom Riddle could not give up the opportunity to communicate with the other person. Therefore, since Tom Riddle in the original work was not discovered, he should not have been exposed so quickly. As for why the other party suddenly closed their book and disappeared, perhaps there are other reasons, and I can only wait now. Since Cyrus crossed into the diary, he has been waiting for this opportunity, and in order to resurrect, he can be more patient. In fact, at the beginning, he made two plans, just to see who the person who opened the diary was. If Lucius Malfoy had opened his diary, he would have directly asked him to find a few black wizards and resurrect them with their vitality. But now it seems that perhaps when Voldemort handed over the diary to Malfoy, he only told him that it could open the Chamber of Secrets, but did not mention the Horcruxes to him. Now, Cyrus can only continue according to Tom Riddle's original resurrection plan. To absorb the life of the little wizard, and then use this to start influencing reality, ultimately achieving resurrection. Of course, he's not Tom Riddle, so the duel with Harry in the Chamber of Secrets can be completely omitted. On the contrary, it is possible to take advantage of this gap and slip away before Dumbledore is recalled by the school board. Overall, this is a good plan, and the important thing is that no one will die during this process, even Fairy's cat. Mrs. Loris will live well in the end. Of course, except for those roosters that were strangled to death by Ginny. Cyrus can only express his apologies to Kunkin for this. Of course, this plan does have risks, and the biggest danger is naturally Dumbledore. But besides that, Cyrus doesn't have a better way either. He doesn't have long feet on his body, and if Ginny doesn't bring him into Hogwarts, there's nowhere else to go. Besides, those adult wizards outside are not as easy to deceive as those idiots in Hogwarts. As long as you have a physical presence, it will not be difficult to leave Hogwarts with a powerful snake monster, and after leaving Hogwarts, the safety factor will be greatly enhanced. Even if Dumbledore found out that he was playing tricks, he probably wouldn't be able to find his own shadow. As for confessing to Dumbledore, Cyrus rejected it as soon as he thought of it. Dumbledore may never believe a person with Tom Riddle's face. He would only feel that Voldemort wanted to play tricks in front of him, especially after the failed attempt to steal the Philosopher's Stone in the previous academic year, perhaps plotting some kind of scheme. Ginny quickly walked down the stairs and saw Harry chatting and laughing with Ron at the dining table. She immediately blushed and lowered her head, pretending to be a lady and sitting quietly in a chair. The other members of the Weasley family were not surprised by this, and Ginny had been in this state ever since Fred and George secretly drove the magic car to pick Harry up. Harry is not familiar with Ginny, he just thinks that Ron's little sister has a strange personality and is not very talkative. Harry simply greeted her and immediately focused on dealing with the food on the table. In the humble abode, his food was much better than in the Dursley family, almost every meal was very full, making him unable to help but worry about gaining several pounds when school started. Perhaps the Quidditch team will refuse to let him continue as a seeker due to his increased size. However, these days he occasionally plays family Quidditch with several other members of the Weasley family, and obviously his skills have not declined, which has made Harry relax a lot. After dinner, Ginny quickly walked back to her room, closed the door from inside, and made sure no one could come in. Then she walked to her desk and carefully placed her hand on the diary. She hadn't paid much attention before, but now she realized that the book looked quite impressive. The black cover was a bit faded, but very smooth. Although old, it is not broken at all. The date and some individual name are printed on the cover, which looks a bit like a publishing house. Is this a diary from 50 years ago? 50 years, very long ago, especially when the owner of the book went through such a terrifying era. Perhaps this Mr. Tom Riddle has already died. Ginny couldn't help but think. She continued to open the book, and the previous sentence that she couldn't read in time had disappeared. She waited for a moment, but there was no letter on the book. Maybe he won't know what's happening outside of the book. Thinking this way reduced Ginny's worries about this diary a bit. At least from now on, it doesn't pose any harm. So she picked up a feather pen again and dipped it in ink to write. Inside the diary, Cyrus anxiously waited for Ginny to respond to him again. He couldn't do anything now, as if he was being gently scratched by a furry kitten with its paws. The mysterious spells, profound potions, and stunning transformations of the past couldn't keep his attention focused. It's like a husband and father anxiously waiting for their wife and children in the hallway of the delivery room. Now, the child he was waiting for finally gave birth. "Hello, Mr. Riddle, are you still there? My mother came over just now, and I'm not sure if I want to tell her about you." Cyrus's excited heart suddenly calmed down, obviously this was the most critical moment. Is it because he gained Ginny's trust that his plan could continue, or was it because he was caught up in a scheme and embarked on a path of destruction? Simply saying don't may arouse suspicion, but it will only backfire. He didn't dare to think for too long, and after a moment, he gave a response. Of course you can, in fact, you should do it this way. Any wizard should be wary of magical items unless you are truly convinced that they are trustworthy. To be honest, I thought you had checked them before communicating with me. Fortunately, you received my diary, so if it were the wizard sonnets, you might be in danger. You're right, Mr. Riddle. I don't want to just say 5-element limericks from now on. Of course, I think Mr. Riddle can be trusted. Upon seeing this response, Ginny immediately chuckled. She remembered that she had even recited Harry Potter's name once before to verify if she had been cursed. However, it is precisely because of this that it appears that this diary is not one of those evil magical props. It cares about me. Ginny's eyes were sparkling. Of course, I wouldn't do such cruel things like those black wizards. In fact, I was one of the best students in Hogwarts before. I was a prefect and later served as the president of the student union. During my time at school, I also received the Special Contribution Award to the school. I think even now, that medal is still in the prize display room. Cyrus hinted that Ginny herself was trustworthy and diverted the conversation. Really? You sound like Percy, Ginny replied in surprise, but he hasn't become the president of the student union yet, nor has he won any special contribution award. Who is Percy? It's my brother, he was the prefect of Gryffindor last year. And he got 12 OWL certificates, but he's a bit bored. At this point, Ginny almost believed that the diary was harmless. I don't think I need to tell Mom about your situation, do you think? Just this once. Cyrus suppressed his inner joy and said earnestly, sometimes having a little bit of his own secret is also an interesting thing. The new book set sail, and the internal investment has passed. Rest assured to invest. Seeking a wave of collection and follow-up reading is really important to me as a young author. Chapter 3. Impure Bloodline. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The summer vacation passed quickly. In these more than 10 days, Cyrus has almost gained Ginny's trust. Now they are as close as old friends they have known for many years. To be honest, this is not difficult at all. Although Ginny is the most beloved child in the family, as a girl, she always has secrets that are difficult to confide in her family. At such times, Cyrus came in handy. Sometimes Cyrus feels guilty about deceiving little girls, but he doesn't care much about resurrection. Anyway, Ginny won't die in the end, and all the people petrified by the snake monster will eventually be rescued. The rest of the people in the burrow noticed that Ginny's behavior was a bit strange because she hadn't yelled since August and returned to her room early every day. Everyone thought it was Harry's fault, and Fred and George would always glance at each other and then chuckle incessantly. Mr. Riddle, Hogwarts will start school tomorrow. Cyrus could feel the anticipation and excitement in Ginny's words, and for every little wizard, going to school for classes was an exciting thing because it meant they were not dumbbells. Meanwhile, he is even more excited than Ginny. The road to resurrection is almost right in front of him. If the plan goes smoothly, he will have physical ownership before the end of the next semester. So he answered with great enthusiasm. Congratulations, Ginny, I believe Hogwarts won't disappoint you. Thank you. A hesitant thank you fell, and Cyrus guessed that she must have some more to say. To be honest, I'm a bit worried about my branch. Fred and George refused to tell me about the contents of the branch ceremony. But last year I eavesdropped on their conversation with Ron, so there's a possibility I'll face a giant monster, she said anxiously, and I know they did deal with a giant monster last year. Also, I'm worried about being bullied in school. Seeing Ginny's words, Cyrus couldn't help but smile. Keeping the separation ceremony confidential for every first-grade wizard has been a reserved program for every year, and many outrageous claims have emerged about it. However, when it comes to the division ceremony, Cyrus couldn't help but regret missing last year's division ceremony. He may never be able to say the phrase, pure bloodline, again. Of course, he is now Voldemort, a mixed race. That's lying to you, Ginny. The school won't let first-grade wizards deal with monsters. Keeping the process of sorting confidential is actually a tradition at Hogwarts. In fact, the sorting ceremony is not too dangerous, and you don't need to worry at all. As for being bullied, have you forgotten the curses I taught you? If someone dares to curse at you, then pick up the wand and give it to him. Let him know that you're not easy to mess with. Cyrus said without hesitation. Okay, I'll resist. But what does it mean there's not too much danger? Ginny asked in response. Cyrus couldn't help but tease, of course it's to ensure that the little wizards won't die, otherwise the parents wouldn't be happy, do you think? Thank you for your comfort. Ginny angrily closed her diary. She didn't expect Tom Riddle to also refuse to tell her the specific details of the branch. And that statement actually made her more worried. Damn Tom, I don't want to talk to you anymore. She angrily smashed her diary onto the bed, muttering and sitting there. But soon she couldn't help but open her diary again. Are you sure we don't have to fight against monsters? Of course I'm sure. Besides, even if you really want to fight monsters, I don't think you need to worry. Don't forget the spells I taught you. If you need, I can also tell you how to deal with monsters. Their brains are very small, and you just need to lift a heavy object with a floating spell and hit the back of their head hard to knock them unconscious. Cyrus comforted. Perhaps to compensate for his deception towards Ginny, he reluctantly took on the role of a private tutor. He taught her almost all the spells in Standard Spell 1, and now Ginny may be even more powerful than Ron. Seeing this, Ginny also felt relieved. I'll trust you once. Good night, Mr. Riddle. Good night Ginny, I wish you all the best tomorrow. As Cyrus wished, Ginny did indeed have a smooth day the next day. What went wrong were Harry and her brother Ron. They missed the Hogwarts Express, and to make matters worse, no one noticed it before Hermione came to find her. Hello Ginny, have you seen Harry and Ron? I couldn't find them in the entire train carriage. Hermione saw Ginny as if she had seen a savior. Fred and George said they were both following behind you. I didn't, my parents took me into the platform first. Ginny shook her head, and next to her sat Luna with white hair. Ginny thought she was a bit of a strange girl, but they should be on the train. We're together. Ginny said strangely. I can't find them anywhere. Hermione sat across from Ginny, angrily saying, and she always had a bad feeling. The child is quiet and must be acting like a demon. God knows what these two troublemakers will do. I just hope they don't deduct points from Gryffindor anymore, Hermione said. At this moment, an ethereal voice rang in Hermione's ear, gentle as a floating ghost in the air. I'm not sure, Luna's eyes widened. What? I'm not sure if flying in a square box while sitting in the sky will result in a deduction of points, but I think it's cool and I want to give it a try. She looked out the window. What? Hermione and Ginny both raised their voices and turned their heads to look out the window. Ron and Harry waved happily at them, like two highly anticipated generals. That's Dad's car. They don't think they're very honorable, do they? Hermione said absurdly, indicating that she was already half angry. It's really good, they will definitely give Gryffindor a big deduction, and there's even a possibility of being fired. Being fired. Ginny's face turned pale and she screamed in panic. She still thinks that she can spend 6 years of student time happily with Harry Potter. But if what Hermione said is true, then it's all over. Don't worry, I'm just saying it's possible. Hermione thought Ginny was worried about Ron and immediately comforted her. We did something even more absurd last year, but it was okay in the end. As long as they weren't seen by Muggles, I don't think there would be a big problem. But this kind of behavior is really She looked out the window, hesitating to speak, and the magical car finally rushed into the clouds again and disappeared. Never mind, I'll go find Neville. Hermione stood up and walked alone to the door, leaving space for Ginny and her classmates. Have a nice day, Ginny. Thank you. The new book sets sail, and the internal investment has passed. Rest assured to invest. Seeking a wave of collection and follow-up reading is really important to me as a young author. Oh. Please don't raise books, sometimes I really raise them and die. Chapter 4. Night Tour on the first day of school. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tom. You lied to me. Ginny sat angrily in front of the desk, her quill almost poking at the paper. It can be seen that she is really angry. Usually, she would respectfully refer to Cyrus as Mr. Riddle. Be gentle, don't poke me out. Besides, when did I deceive you? Cyrus immediately responded. Humph. You said the separation ceremony would be dangerous. What happened? That was just a tattered hat. Will it bite off my head? Ginny said angrily. What made her most angry was that before the separation, she confidently boasted to other students about the first-hand information she had learned, and the result, you've made me lose face. However, her poking at the book still stopped, and upon careful examination, she found that she had not left any marks on the diary, which relieved her. In fact, it is almost impossible for physical means to destroy Horcruxes. I have never said that there will be any danger in the branch ceremony. I remind you not to worry, there won't be too much danger. As I said, you are in good condition. Congratulations. Cyrus said awkwardly. Having spent a long period of loneliness, communicating with Ginny was also a great comfort to him. After all, Cyrus was not Voldemort. Yeah. But what you said made me feel like I might lose my arms or legs. It seems that some of us have a misunderstanding of the word not too dangerous. Thank you, that's completely not dangerous. Do you expect that hat on my head to suffocate me? Ginny asked in response. Not entirely. If you are inherently evil, it will assign you to Azkaban, which is where the danger lies, Cyrus said. But Ginny obviously believed it, and she widened her eyes. Are you serious? Of course it is, isn't it talking to you in your mind? The Sorting Hat can see through people's hearts, and naturally evil people should be placed in Azkaban. That is actually Hogwarts' 5th Academy, representing the magical creature, soul-eating monster. I have never heard of these before. There are many secrets about Hogwarts that you don't know. Even Dumbledore couldn't have mastered all the secrets here. Exploring castles is a very interesting thing, and I remember Gryffindor's tradition is night tours, Cyrus tempted. This is against school rules. And I don't think Percy or Hermione will be happy. Really, but I think your other two twin brothers may be willing to support you. Ginny has already told him some specific information about the Weasley family these days, so Cyrus can speak up without any hesitation. They are indeed afraid that the world will not be chaotic. Not to mention that, did anything interesting happen on the first day of school? Did you make friends? Cyrus asked with concern. Of course there is, it's just too interesting. Ginny wrote heavily on the paper, and it's not difficult to see that what she said was completely ironic. Harry and Ron were late. They were sitting in Dad's car and driving all the way from the sky, only to be witnessed by several muggles. In the end, they broke a beating willow or something. Many people thought they would be fired. Fortunately, they didn't. This is really, very exciting experience. I just think it's terrible. What if Harry gets fired? It was specifically Ron's instigation, and Dad's side is likely to have trouble, Ginny said angrily. Do you really care about that Harry Potter? Cyrus asked sharply. This made Ginny, who was full of anger, panic all at once. Her face turned red, as if she had been poked at careful. No. I just think Harry. He looks very quiet, not such a reckless person. Ginny covered her hot face and wrote this sentence in her diary with one hand. She's only grateful that Mr. Riddle can't see her now, otherwise it would be too embarrassing. So, you don't care about him? Of course not. Ginny quickly denied, then hesitated to write, at most. At most, it's a bit of worship. You know, he eliminated the mysterious man, and I grew up listening to his stories. It's really amazing, so I don't think you need to worry about him. Harry Potter eliminated the mysterious man, which can be said to have saved the wizarding world. If Dumbledore fired him, he would definitely receive thousands of yelling letters the next day, don't you think? You're right. Ginny's mood suddenly improved a lot, but her face was still flushed. I need to go to bed, Mr. Riddle. We have class tomorrow. Sleep. No, I suggest you go on a night tour. Cyrus immediately tempted. But. Don't you want to explore inside the castle? But it doesn't make much difference to go during the day. Of course it's different. If you keep following the rules, you'll never see Hogwarts under the silver moonlight at night. Not to mention, playing hide and seek with the administrator is a very interesting thing. Aren't you tempted at all? Of course not. Where should I go? Ginny quickly wrote in her diary as she walked. Ginny, who was determined by her iron bones, still lost to her own curiosity. She was panicked, sneaky, and every few seconds she would lift her head and turn around to look around. Compared to these, the most distressing thing is that she still has no idea about the structure of the castle, and even if she wants to go somewhere, it is still a bit dark. Why not go to the hallway on the 4th floor and take a look? Didn't your brother say he and that Harry Potter were fighting against the mysterious man there last year? Take a look at the place where the great Harry Potter once fought. Ginny's eyes lit up and she thought it was a good idea. Where is the corridor on the 4th floor? If you are currently in the Tower of Gryffindor, then. In the diary, a map slowly emerged. This is a map drawn by Cyrus based on Voldemort's memory, with almost no secret passages. After all, Voldemort is not interested in those boring things. And there's no need to let Ginny know about some secret rooms. Ginny quickly glanced at it and immediately closed her diary. She heard that sometimes there are teachers patrolling at night, and there is also a possibility of encountering other students on night tours. She doesn't want anyone to know she's talking to a book. The corridor on the 4th floor. Over here. After Ginny, who was not yet experienced in night tours, determined the direction and quickly walked out. She can't wait to see where Harry fought last year. However, she paid no attention to the black shadow that appeared behind her. The new book set sail, and the internal investment has passed. Rest assured to invest. Seeking a wave of collection and recommendation, this is really important to me as a young author. Love you all. Chapter 5. Corridor and Metal Exhibition Room on the 4th floor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ginny tiptoed inside the dark castle. It was almost 12 o'clock now, and there was no light in the hallway. The wind blowing everywhere howled incessantly in the darkness, and the tall trees outside the castle swayed their branches in the wind, like twisted bird-shaped cannibals. All of this makes Ginny a little scared. She was suspicious and anxious, and even the slightest sound made her tremble with fear. Now Ginny regrets putting away her diary. Perhaps the next corner will reveal a 3-headed monster that eats people without blinking an eye. Ron told her that one of their friends left a 3-headed dog the size of a house in the castle last semester. Even with the diary in hand, Mr. Riddle couldn't help her. Mr. Riddle. She could only hold the diary tightly in her arms, trying to draw a little bit of weak courage from it, as if she were not alone, but with someone to accompany her. Perhaps this diary really had such magic. Ginny gradually felt relieved, and she realized that the huge castle seemed only terrifying, but in reality, incredibly spacious and very quaint and magnificent. It's much more interesting than her crowded little home. She is now fully aware of the fun of night tours in this castle. She can do whatever she wants, without worrying about school rules. She can run as she wants in the hallway, even if she picks up her wand and sparks recklessly. At most, it may be warned by portraits on the walls or ghosts passing by. Just like now, Ginny has encountered the ghost of Gryffindor. It's not good for a little girl to wander alone in the castle at night. Oh Gryffindor, it's obvious. I think, Ginny Weasley, right? The Weasley family's hair is really recognizable. But you actually went on a night tour on your first day of school. You're even more impressive than your two brothers. Sir Nicholas said happily. Hello, almost headless Nick. Of course Ginny knew Nick because he also performed his splitting action at Gryffindor's dining table this year, just like in previous years. Unfortunately, there was still a little flesh and skin between his head and neck. It's impolite, you don't even want to call me Sir. Sir Nicholas pretended to be angry. Speaking of almost losing his head, this is indeed a regret. According to his statement, he was also unwilling to let the axe strike his neck dozens of times. Good Sir Nicholas, Ginny immediately changed her voice. Good child. Wishing you a pleasant night tour. Also, don't walk towards the 5th floor, Pippi Ghost is over there, and don't use a wand, be careful not to lure Filch over. Sir Nicholas, who was in a good mood, reminded him a few words and walked through the wall with his head hanging around his neck. So Ginny put away her wand and continued walking in the dark. Not long after, she reached the edge of the corridor on the 4th floor, and even found a wooden door. That's it. Locked. This won't make it difficult for me. Araho cave opens. She pulled out her wand, and the lock on the wooden door answered, causing Solara to fall to the ground and make a loud noise. Ginny couldn't help feeling proud and said, fortunately, Mr. Riddle taught me all the spells from 1st grade. She happily pushed open the door and walked in, leaving the room pitch black, fluorescent flicker. The front end of the wand immediately lit up, illuminating the room. But what disappointed Ginny was that the room was extremely boring, with nothing left. There is no terrifying 3-headed dog that falls asleep when it hears a song, nor is there a trapdoor that leads to the ground. There's nothing here. She lay her diary flat on the ground, holding a glowing wand in one hand and writing it in a twisted manner. Perhaps Dumbledore has restored all of this, Cyrus replied, but there are still many interesting things inside the castle. Do you know how many secret passages and chambers there are? Or maybe if you're hungry at night and want to eat something, just go to the lower part of the auditorium where there's a fruit painting. Scratching the pear inside the painting will turn it into a doorknob. Forget it, I'm not too hungry. I had enough to eat at the dinner party, Ginny refused. She was a bit disappointed that she couldn't find anything related to Harry, but she quickly thought of something else. By the way, Mr. Riddle. You said before, have you ever won a special contribution award? Can I go take a look? Of course, Cyrus immediately said, I'm glad you still remember this. The metal display room is on the 4th floor, just take a few turns from here and you'll be there. So Ginny closed her diary again, extinguished the light of her wand, and quietly walked out. A few minutes later, another black shadow appeared here. Hurry up, Mrs. Loris. Catch those little ghosts who violate school rules. I hear the sound. Filch's voice was hoarse and unpleasant, like an evil wizard who had drunk too much potion. However, if it were really like this, he might actually be a little happier. He didn't have very good legs and feet, and with an oil lamp in one hand, he ran over awkwardly. Ah, I found a lock. Careless guy. He excitedly picked up the chain that had fallen on the ground. How he wanted to tie it to those little wizards and let them hang it on the roof for a few days. Hurry up, it must be those 2 boys from the Weasley family. Don't let them run away. He urged, and Mrs. Loris sniffed hard at the residual scent on the ground, slowly following Ginny's footsteps. Ginny is spinning around in the metal display room, where she must have been cast the stretching curse, because this classroom looks much larger than outside. Numerous medals are placed in rows, including Quidditch trophies, as well as other competitions, and some are the names of class leaders and grade presidents. These are all placed behind a huge glass. Under the dim light, Ginny saw Percy's name and left it on top. At the same time, she naturally saw Tom Riddle's name. In fact, this name has appeared many times in the medal display room, and Ginny can fully imagine how excellent the other party is. The Special Contribution Award is completely different from other awards, and this medal is very large, highlighting its special status. It's just that it's not clear why Tom Riddle won the award. Ginny was immediately filled with curiosity, and she couldn't help but want to know the answer immediately. She opened her diary again. It was almost her signature move. However, this time the diary was interrupted before it could be opened. A hand reached out from the darkness and grabbed Ginny's wrist. Ginny widened her eyes in terror. Please recommend and collect, lovely babies, don't raise books. Love you all. Chapter 6. Secrets and the Guardian Curse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fred, George. Ginny's face was full of panic, and she screamed in terror. But Fred, who was quick-witted, covered his mouth. Keep it down, Ginny, Filch is not far away. George quickly said. Why are you here? Ginny lowered her voice and said in panic. Her heart was beating very fast, as if she was about to jump out of her small chest. When did they appear next to me? Did they see me talking to the diary? These two questions echoed incessantly in her mind, and Ginny felt like a prisoner being pinned to the execution stand. As soon as the executioners George and Fred spoke, they would wave their axes to separate themselves from the diary. However, neither of them mentioned the matter of the diary. Sorry to scare you, Fred slowly let go of her and said with a smile, I'll explain to you later. Come with us now. As they spoke, the two of them inexplicably pulled Ginny out of the medal display room and walked in one direction. As she walked, Ginny heard a sharp voice getting closer and closer. It's Filch, the administrator of Hogwarts, who is probably the most annoying person in the whole school, Fred explained in her ear, oh, and Snape. If he caught us, it would be terrible. Professor McGonagall would deduct points from us. To be honest, that's not a big deal. But if we were to be locked up and write reviews, it would be too boring. George said, fortunately, he hasn't caught us since first grade, has he, Fred? That's right. Fred proudly walked up to a witch statue with Ginny. At this moment, she could hear that the administrator named Filch seemed to be very close, maybe he would catch them by turning a corner. So what should we do? Ginny wasn't as panicked as before. Fred and George did scare her, but she thought she had been caught communicating with the diary. Of course we have secret weapons. Fred proudly pulled out his wand and tapped the one-eyed witch's head twice. Separate left and right. The next moment, in Ginny's surprised gaze, the stone statue actually separated from the middle, revealing a dark secret passage. Go in quickly. The three people immediately crawled in, and then the stone statue slowly closed. Fluorescent flashing. Wait here for a moment, neither Fred nor George suggested continuing along the secret passage. Where does this secret passage lead to? I can't go anywhere because there's a blockage ahead, Fred lied, pretending to be relaxed. Although he was glad that his sister was not as boring as Percy and even better than Ron, telling her the secret passage to leave school in first grade was not a good thing. Fortunately, Ginny was thinking of something else now, so she didn't doubt them at all. How did you find me? In the end, she asked the most concerning question. To be honest, we saw you as soon as you left the tower, George said. Are you always following me? Ginny widened her eyes. If that's the case, wouldn't it be discovered that I occasionally communicate with Mr. Riddle in my diary? Of course not. We're not that bored, Fred immediately denied. Actually, we were planning to go to the Forbidden Forest to see, but halfway through, we found out you were almost caught by Filch, so we came to save you, right George? That's right. George smiled and nodded. But how did you know that Filch and I were here? This is our secret. Fred and George looked at each other tacitly and laughed at the same time. For now, we don't plan to make this secret public. Even you can't, Ginny. Secret. Ginny looked at them with a scrutinizing gaze, but none of the twins gave in. Okay, I'm used to it anyway. Besides, who doesn't have a secret? As she spoke, she instinctively hugged the diary book in her arms even tighter. Fred and George didn't notice her little movements, but instead laughed and said, "Come on, Ginny, that's not a secret. Almost everyone in the family knows you like Harry. Except for little Ronnie." George added. "You're right, except for little Ronnie, he's really a young child." Fred smiled and shook his head. Upon hearing this, Ginny immediately blushed. But unexpectedly, she not only didn't get angry, but also felt grateful and proud. "I'm afraid you will never know what my true secret is." After a while, Fred took advantage of Ginny's lack of attention and took out the activity map. He quickly glanced at it and then put it away. "Alright, let's go. Filch is now on the 6th floor, and Pippi Ghost is hanging out with him. Maybe he's causing trouble for him," he said gloating. "What? But how did you know?" "It's all said to be a secret is something that cannot be revealed." George opened the door of the secret passage, and there was indeed no one outside. "By the way, this secret passage is also a secret, don't reveal it. I don't want to turn this place into Gryffindor's public lounge. You two don't tell me your secret, but you want me to keep it a secret for you. Don't forget why we're here. To save you. Otherwise, you'll be ruined. I will definitely be fired." "Okay, I don't want to be ungrateful," Ginny said helplessly. Then, the three of them returned to the tower together. When Mrs. Pang saw them, she was not surprised at all. "Command, child. Honey-eating birds." Returning to the dormitory, Ginny climbed onto the bed lightly to avoid waking up her roommate. She had originally planned to talk to Mr. Riddle about the Special Contribution Award and other events that happened tonight, but before she could pick up her pen, drowsiness had already surged in her heart, making her dizzy. Finally, she could only hastily write one sentence. "Good night." She fell asleep. "Good night, have a good dream, Ginny." After Cyrus replied, he resumed studying the curse. Although Voldemort was very talented in his youth, his experience and knowledge were still too shallow, and there were also some spells that he did not know. The Guardian Curse. To successfully use this magic, the caster must concentrate on recalling the happiest memories they can think of. Unfortunately, Voldemort, who did not understand what love meant, naturally did not understand what happiness meant. Of course, with Voldemort's abilities, it doesn't make a difference whether he can use this spell or not. But for Cyrus, he still hopes to learn this curse. The Guardian Curse is very useful in defending against dark magic and resisting dark creatures, and driving out soul-devouring monsters is only a small part of its usefulness. Seeking a wave of recommendations and collections, babies, please smash me with tickets. Chapter 7. Post-Class Tutoring. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The spell of the Guardian Curse is not difficult, and the principle is also clear to Cyrus. Tom Riddle once tried to master this spell, but ultimately failed. Cyrus understood all the theories, but as someone who had never held a wand before, he didn't know if he could cast this spell. It wasn't until the next evening that Cyrus waited for Ginny's message again. "Good evening, Mr. Riddle. I was almost late this morning, but fortunately my roommate called me up." Cyrus saw a hint of complaint in Ginny's words and immediately replied, "Almost. That's just not right. I think last night's night trip was quite interesting, right? Even if it was really late, it was worth it. Anyway, I can teach you most of the knowledge, maybe even better than the professors because I am more patient and it's 1.on.1 tutoring. But I will be deducted points, I don't want to become the culprit of Gryffindor, Ginny wrote with a red face. Then, as if remembering something, he eagerly wrote, Mr. Riddle, do you want to know what happened after I went to the medal display room? After writing this sentence, she stopped and waited for her Mr. Riddle to respond. May I hear its details? Ginny was not so satisfied with the answer, but she still pouted and wrote. I was almost caught by the administrator, but Fred and George helped me hide. They had a secret. Even if they couldn't see, they could know where someone was. And they also knew some secrets. It was right at the one-eyed witch statue on the 4th floor corridor, and they asked me to keep it a secret, but I don't think it's important to tell you. By the way, Mr. Riddle, that's not on the map you gave me. Live Point map. Cyrus knew the secret of the twins as soon as he heard it. The activity map created by 4 raiders led by Harry's father, even Dumbledore, will be marked with a location within the school. It can be said that as a magical prop, the Live Point map is still very exquisite. Cyrus was also very interested in the existence of a live map, but after thinking about it, he realized that it was not very useful for his plan, and many parts of Hogwarts could not be displayed even on a map, such as the House of Request and the Chamber of Secrets. As for the secret passage to leave Hogwarts, those who have read the original know 3. The one that hits the willow, the one on the 4th floor of the one-eyed witch statue, and the one behind the mirror on the 5th floor. These 3 roads are already enough for him to use. This is normal Ginny. At Hogwarts, there are as many secrets as there are, but I think they probably won't know the secrets I know. For example. Ginny asked provocatively. For example, some secret rooms. Cyrus' words seemed to have magical power, attracting Ginny. A secret room. That's right. Cyrus slowly replied, not intending to reveal Slytherin's secret room right now. In fact, there are also many other secret rooms in the castle besides Slytherin's secret room. Tom Riddle discovered many of Slytherin's secret rooms when he was searching for them before, but most of them were empty or only had some debris inside. As a magical castle with a history of over 1,000 years, Hogwarts actually has many secret rooms. Although most of them are empty rooms, sometimes serving as a temporary shelter is enough. He revealed several locations in the secret rooms in a row, which surprised Ginny. Why didn't you say it before? I think it would be more surprising for you to discover these things yourself, don't you think? Ginny nodded and wrote down in her diary what happened in class today. Due to having already studied in advance, she received a lot of praise today and added several points to Gryffindor, almost like a little Hermione. However, her personality is not as sensitive and sharp as Hermione's, so not only is she not disliked by others, but she has also made many friends. By the way, Ron received a yelling letter from his mother this morning. It seems like his father was also in trouble because of their situation. Ron always causes trouble, and Fred and George are right. He's like a completely immature child. Ginny couldn't find anyone to share this during the day, so she had to pour bitterness on Cyrus. And actually, I feel a bit awkward because during class, people often ask me, "Is that your brother who sent the yelling letter this morning?" She said sadly, obviously feeling that Ron had made her lose face. However, in reality, Ron is still very concerned about Ginny. After narrowly escaping from hitting Lou last night, he still disregarded his injuries and wanted to see Ginny's branch. Unfortunately, the branch ceremony had already ended at that time. You don't understand, little Ginny. Boys are like this. Naive and immature. No. That's not how you are. Ginny retorted. I'm not a child, Cyrus concluded the topic. Alright, let's start tonight's tutoring. You shouldn't have to worry about spell learning and transformation this semester, but you still need to be careful and practice more. What do you want to learn next? Defense against the dark arts. I borrowed a textbook from Ron, but he gave me Where Are the Magical Animals all at once. Last year's Black Magic Defense textbook was called Black Magic. A Guide to Self-Defense, but Where Are the Magical Animals is also considered an auxiliary book. Black Magic Defense in grades 1 to 3 is almost all about dealing with dark creatures, and these dark creatures are also part of the magical animals. Ginny originally planned to use the second handbook from Lockhart that she had spent a lot of money on this year to attend classes. But Cyrus told her that those things were no different from waste paper. Even if read as a novel, one has to endure Lockhart's pervasive narcissism in his writings. Ginny opens, Where Are the Magical Animals, and after Dumbledore and Newt's preface, the first part of the book raises a question about, what are animals? She saw Ron's note written at the end of the question. A guy with many, many legs and a fluffy body, which immediately made her laugh. Obviously, this is not the correct answer, but she can easily associate it with Ron's fear of spiders. Then, she quickly discovered the other pleasures left behind in this book. For example, according to the classification level of the Ministry of Magic, the most dangerous creature is marked as XXXXX, followed by Ron adding, or anything Hagrid likes. Ginny was overjoyed, knowing that Hagrid was the huge man who took the new student onto the boat crossing the lake. He also brought Harry out of the overturned alley during the summer vacation. During the vacation, Ginny had already heard Ron talk more than once about the three-headed dog and the fire dragon, all of which were ferocious things raised by Mr. Hagrid. Then she also discovered that Ron added 4x, after the 5x, behind the 8-eyed giant spider, making it an unprecedented 9x level magical animal. It can be seen how scared Ron is of spiders. In another book, Black Magic. A Guide to Self-Defense, there are many spells mentioned, such as the Repel Curse, Nose Curse, Red Spark, and Green Spark, which are not taught in spell classes. There are also lighting spells and extinguishing spells, which are also mentioned in the standard spell. Cyrus asked Ginny to read the book herself, and if she encountered any incomprehensible content, she could freely ask him questions. For the defense against black magic, he can now be said to be a true master, and it is feared that not many of the previous professors of the defense against black magic have stronger theoretical knowledge than him. Of course, these people do not include Dumbledore. New books need to be taken care of. If you think the key is well written, you can bookmark it first. Chapter 8. First Possession. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Time passed peacefully, and during this time, there was hardly any major incident at Hogwarts. Except for the chaos that Lockhart caused in class. Now Ginny almost understood why Mr. Riddle was so contemptuous of Lockhart's works. He's just a haystack. Ron has said this more than once during meals, but each time it has caused Hermione's dissatisfaction. Hermione is almost a brainless fan of Lockhart, even though she has seen the other party cause trouble several times, she still firmly believes in the false Lockhart in the book. During this period, Ginny became increasingly dependent and trusting of Mr. Riddle. She shared almost everything with Cyrus, her happiness, worries, troubles, and fears. She almost opened her entire soul to Cyrus, who was greedily devouring her secrets and fears. Now, Ginny raised her eyes, her expression completely different from usual. Or it would be more appropriate to call her Cyrus now. This is the first time in a few weeks since the start of school that Cyrus has attempted to seize control of Ginny's body. He is very cautious and will give up if there is anything wrong. But in reality, it went even smoother than he had imagined. Cyrus stuffed the meat patty into his mouth and took a big sip of pumpkin juice. Although it's not his own body, he can feel everything that this body can feel now. The long-lost food has made him very happy, and he plans to go around after breakfast. Colin Cleeve. He turned his head and looked at a very thin boy with grey hair next to the dining table. "What's wrong, Miss Weasley?" Colin Cleeve turned his head in surprise. Since the start of school, he has not spoken to this very lovely classmate yet. "Please help me take a leave, I'm feeling a bit unwell." "But I don't think your expression is wrong." "Okay, Colin Creevey stared blankly at Cyrus back, because before he could finish speaking, Cyrus had already strode away. Cyrus first wandered around the school and then walked towards the direction of the Forbidden Forest. He needs to first figure out where the school roosters are kept, and then prepare the opportunity to kill them all. Passing by the playground, Cyrus gradually moved away from the castle and embarked on a small path. On the path, he could see a vast forest from a distance. The area of the Forbidden Forest covers at least several hills, and at the edge of the forest, there is a small wooden house. Cyrus approached step by step and saw Hagrid bending over in the field, where the pumpkins were almost taller than Ginny. "Hey!" Hagrid noticed him and immediately stood up and shouted, "Little wizard, hurry back. The Forbidden Forest is not where you should come." "Hello, Hagrid. I'm not going in, I'm just walking around." Cyrus didn't stop, but slowly walked to Hagrid's pumpkin field. "What a big pumpkin, did you use the expansion spell?" "Ah, it's you, the little girl from the Weasley family." Hagrid recognized Ginny at this moment, and his attitude immediately became friendly, but at the same time, he became even more vigilant. Due to the troublemakers Fred and George, Hagrid now has a psychological shadow over the Weasley family. It's just a little help, and by Halloween, they'll be even bigger. "Do you want to come in and sit down?" "No, I'm walking everywhere." Cyrus didn't plan on eating Hagrid's dark little dish and immediately refused. "Don't worry, I won't go to the Forbidden Forest. I know it's very dangerous there." "That's good, you're much more obedient than your two brothers." Hagrid was glad that he didn't have one more troublemaker to deal with. Cyrus walked around the edge of the Forbidden Forest and soon found the captive rooster. At the same time, he could also feel Hagrid's gaze occasionally coming over, afraid that he would suddenly dive into the Forbidden Forest. Without a chance to take action, Cyrus had to walk back slowly. "The air here is really good. I'll go back first, Hagrid. I'll visit you again next time." "Of course," Hagrid said somewhat reluctantly. He has always loved his family and had a good relationship with several young boys from the Weasley family, and their attitude towards Harry was also very friendly. Therefore, he was also very friendly to Ginny. The cabin by the Forbidden Forest still looks a bit lonely in normal times. Even Harry and the others don't come over often. When Cyrus returned to the castle, the course had probably already begun, and no one could be seen in the corridor. But just in case, he picked up Ginny's wand and cast a phantom spell on himself. Ginny's wand, like Voldemort's wand, was made of purple wood, and Cyrus was surprised to find that this wand matched him quite well. The purple robe would symbolize his death and rebirth, which is indeed very suitable for him now. The only regret is that Ginny's magic is a bit too weak, to the extent that the phantom curse he cast is not as good as he imagined. When he is still, he can't see anything, but as soon as he moves, he can still see a shallow contour around his body, like a layer of raised glass. But just be careful, it should be enough. Cyrus walked cautiously towards the girls' restroom on the third floor. At this moment, Furk's sharp voice came to his ear. "What's wrong, what have you found?" Filch exclaimed excitedly, a student who skipped class. Cyrus saw Filch stumbling behind the skinny cat, his whole face filled with excitement. Mrs. Loris probably smelled the scent from Cyrus and walked towards the spot where Cyrus had stopped with her head down. It got closer and closer, probably because the smell here became stronger, so its pace slowed down. Mrs. Loris lifted her head, her gaze puzzled as she looked towards the corner of the wall. Filch also immediately looked over. "There's nothing," he cursed softly and said harshly, "it must be hiding. Use the spell, the crime will be even worse." After patrolling Hogwarts for so many years, he certainly knew that there were some spells that could hide a person's appearance, and such situations had happened more than once. At first, Filch thought it was Mrs. Loris who had made a mistake, but it wasn't until a student's half-hearted phantom spell suddenly expired that he understood what was going on. So he immediately reached out his hand and began to explore the area, looking like a blind person with normal eyes. Although this action is comical, it is indeed effective, especially when Cyrus's spell is not perfect and any movement will result in a flaw. Keep going like this. Seeing this, Cyrus had no choice but to take a risk and lift the wand with the smallest amplitude, aiming the tip of the wand at Mrs. Loris. Confusion. Mrs. Loris screamed and her hair stood up, startling Filch. Before Filch could speak, it rushed out as if it had discovered some other clue. Filch immediately followed with a limp. Cyrus breathed a sigh of relief and continued walking towards the third floor. "Baby, please don't keep books, even if it's just at the end of the book. It's really important to keep reading. Thank you, babies." Chapter 9. Chamber of Secrets and Snake Monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since Myrtle was killed by a snake monster 50 years ago, this bathroom has been almost no different from abandoned. No one is willing to use the restroom here. It's not that they feel unlucky, it's just that no one wants their head to suddenly pop out of the toilet while using the toilet, and then chatter incessantly, crying and muttering incessantly. Even among ghosts, Myrtle is very unpopular, second only to the mischievous Pippi ghost. Over time, no one is willing to use the restroom here. When Cyrus walked into the bathroom, he didn't see the peach blossom, probably she was flushing herself into the black lake again with the toilet. This is actually a good thing. Cyrus walked to the front of the wash basin, where the mirror reflected Ginny's lovely face. Ginny's appearance cannot be said to be unrelated to the movie, it can only be said to be completely different. In fact, she is much cuter. He praised it and found the copper faucet that didn't water according to Riddle's memory, with an inconspicuous snake carved on the edge of the faucet. Open. Cyrus opened his mouth and let out a terrifying hiss. He inherited all of Riddle's talents, including his snake-like voice. Suddenly, the dragon head emitted a dazzling white light and began to spin rapidly. Then, the pool also moved and slowly sank, disappearing from his sight, revealing a very thick water pipe that could accommodate a person to enter. Cyrus jumped down without hesitation. Of course, he didn't forget to close the door of the secret room to avoid any accidents. It was like rushing down a dark, sticky, endless slide, and he could see many pipes branching out in all directions, but none of them were as thick as this one. In no time, the slide was about to reach its end. It was a black rock tunnel. Cyrus cast a flying spell to float himself up and avoid falling to the ground. The rock tunnel is very humid and there is a lot of sludge inside. He himself prefers cleanliness. The sunlight flickers. A huge bright light flew out of the wand, hanging above Cyrus like a sun, almost illuminating the entire tunnel. The tunnel leading to the secret chamber is dark and humid, possibly because it is built below the Black Lake, so the stalactites above occasionally drip a few drops of water, making the road to the cave very muddy. Cyrus was pleased that Voldemort invented a flying spell, because whenever he thought of these droplets dripping from the top of his head connecting to the Black Lake, which was the site of so much toilet waste accumulation at Hogwarts, he felt a bit overwhelmed. However, in reality, not to mention the self-purification ability of the huge Black Lake itself, it is sufficient to deal with those impurities. The process of water droplets seeping down from the soil alone has already filtered out impurities. Continuing inside, a huge monster with a mouth as big as that of an adult, its terrifying silhouette lifelike in the darkness. This is the snake slough of the Snake King, covered in a layer of precious snake skin. Voldemort didn't like this thing, but Cyrus found it a bit strange. After all, the snake monster has not appeared in the UK for many years. Even if there are snake monsters in other places, they may not grow so big, and their lifespan is not as long. You can find a way to take it away then. The skin of the snake monster itself has strong magical resistance, whether it is used as armor or for soaking in wine, cough, or as a magical potion material, it is very precious. It's not difficult to take it away, just make a spacious travel suitcase with the stretching curse, and then find an opportunity to take it out of Hogwarts. Christmas vacation is actually a good choice. Avoiding the huge snake skin and walking inside, the tunnel turned one bend after another, finally discovering a sturdy wall in front of it, engraved with two intertwined snakes, their eyes adorned with large, sparkling emeralds. Open. Cyrus made a hissing sound in his mouth, sounding like an evil spell. He was like the ruler of snakes, commanding everything here. The two snakes separated, and the stone wall cracked open in the middle, slowly sliding to both sides and disappearing. Behind the door is a long, dimly lit room. Many stone pillars carved with coiled and entangled serpents support the ceiling that dissolves in the darkness at a high altitude, casting long and eerie shadows over the entire room filled with green and mysterious mist. Cyrus held Ginny's wand and strode forward between the stone pillars coiled by the giant snake. He was so familiar with this place, as if returning to his own home, his footsteps creating hollow and loud echoes among the ghostly walls. When he walked parallel to the last pair of stone pillars, a statue as high as the room itself appeared in front of him, tightly attached to the dark wall behind him. That was an old, monkey-like face, with a sparse long beard that dragged almost all the way to the hem of the stone-carved wizard's robe, and two grey souls standing on the smooth floor of the room. Is this Slytherin himself? Cyrus raised his head and looked up. The statue was ugly, but it didn't matter. Anyway, he was handsome himself. And compared to Slytherin's power, his appearance has long been less important. Speak to me, Slytherin. The greatest of the Hogwarts Big Four. The huge stone-carved face of Slytherin began to move, and its mouth began to open wider and wider, eventually forming a huge black hole. Cyrus closed his eyes to avoid being accidentally injured by the snake monster's magic. Then, he heard something moving in the mouth of the statue, sliding upwards with a rustling sound from deep inside. After a moment, a heavy object hit the ground and the entire room shook. He could hear its heavy body slowly sliding over the dusty ground. Not long after, Cyrus opened his eyes again and saw the appearance of the snake monster with his own eyes. Its scales are green, but they reflect a colorful luster. Its huge body swims on the ground of the secret room, forming a huge circle around Cyrus. Finally, its upper body stands up from behind Cyrus, with eyes larger than a light bulb suspended on top of his head. This is a proof of its obedience. The innate snake vibe has the power to make snakes submit, but the learned snake vibe is just a language. Sleeping for 50 years, this was just a brief moment in the life of the snake monster. Now, it seems to have gained a chance for rebirth, and the terrifying magic is unleashed recklessly. Be quiet. Cyrus ordered. The snake monster immediately lowered its head and heart. Don't worry, you'll be able to move freely soon. Before that, we need to be patient. Cyrus curled his lips slightly. He just came over today to check on the status of the snake monster. As for the attack, let's put it on Halloween night. If nothing unexpected happens during Hogwarts Halloween, it always feels like something is missing. After all, who can say that this ghost festival does not have magic? Ball recommended tickets and follow. Up reading. Babies who like this book can save it and add a bookshelf to prevent getting lost. Chapter 10. Ginny's Doubts. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The next morning, Ginny got up from the bed with her head covered. She felt a bit groggy, as if she hadn't rested. But she knew she couldn't lie down like this anymore. If she slept a little longer, she was afraid the class would start soon. So she quickly sat up, started dressing, combing her hair, and then went to wash up. But when she came back to pick up her textbooks after washing up, she realized that her roommates were still lying in bed one by one, unconscious. Hey! Get up quickly, otherwise you'll be late for class, she exclaimed. However, a head peeked out from under the bed curtain next door and said, Ginny, have you fallen asleep? Today is the weekend. Weekend. Ginny widened her eyes. How could it be the weekend? Did she remember that it was Thursday when she went to bed yesterday? Did you sleep all day? Or is it true that this world is actually a world of science? Of course it's the weekend, wasn't yesterday Friday? You said you were feeling unwell and asked Colin to take a leave for you. Is it possible that you haven't recovered yet? Do you want to go to the school hospital for a check-up? Several roommates immediately asked with concern. It's okay. Maybe I got it wrong. Ginny scratched her hair and slowly sat back on the edge of the bed, turning her gaze to her small desk. There is nothing on the desk, but the diary is hidden in the drawer. Is it you? Mr. Riddle, despite feeling a little skeptical, Ginny kept this matter to herself. At this point, if she were to tell her parents about the diary, she would definitely be scolded. She doesn't want to receive a yelling letter while eating. If that's the case, she'd rather die. On the other hand, Ginny is also unwilling to believe that Mr. Riddle will harm herself. Just like now, although I have lost a short memory, it seems that I have not been hurt. Perhaps Mr. Riddle has other reasons. She wanted to immediately open her diary and figure everything out, but when her hand was placed on the drawer, she felt a bit intimidated. She was afraid that all of this would be false, and from head to toe, Mr. Riddle was just trying to gain her trust. I treat Mr. Riddle as a friend and tell him all the secrets. If I am really betrayed, what should I do? Thinking of this, Ginny suddenly realized that she didn't know anything about Mr. Riddle. She only saw the honors the other party received in the medal display room, but what about everything else? What kind of person is Tom Riddle? He looks so excellent, perhaps just like Percy. No, he's much more interesting than Percy, and he's not so rigid either. Ginny thought it was really interesting that Mr. Riddle had been instigating her to violate some insignificant school rules these days. He also taught himself many small curses that cannot be learned in textbooks, saying that when he conflicts with others, he should be given one. He's not like Percy at all, he's quite like Bill. Ginny thought this way. The more she thought about it, the happier she became, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt that Mr. Riddle could not harm herself. But in this way, the question returns to the starting point. Is Mr. Riddle really up to something, and if so, why is he doing it? And should I continue to communicate with Mr. Riddle? Various problems are troubling Ginny, making her a bit restless. She really wants to continue sleeping, but she can't sleep at all. So she simply got up and silently walked to the public lounge. Hey, Ginny. Ron called out to her with his eyes blurred. Can you help me call Hermione? Harry went to practice Quidditch this morning, and we're planning to go over and take a look. You can also come together. Oh, okay, but I'm not in the mood right now. Ginny just nodded and turned to find Hermione's dormitory. A few minutes later, Ginny and Hermione hurriedly came down together. Are you really not going with us, Ginny? Ron looked much clearer. He was a bit puzzled. His sister usually admires Harry very much and wished she could keep her eyes on him all the time. But now, it seems that she is not so interested in Harry. However, this is not surprising. Setting aside those legends, Harry is actually just an ordinary wizard. Ron himself also realized this in the process of getting along. Of course, Harry, after taking off his legendary coat, is still a great friend, at least much better than Lockhart's little rascal. Ginny pondered for a moment. She didn't really have much mood at first, but thinking that Mr. Riddle would occasionally make her more cheerful, she suddenly felt that there was nothing wrong with going and taking a look. Coincidentally, she has nothing to do now because she has found that Mr. Riddle has kindly completed all her weekend homework. Okay. The three of them first went to the lobby to bring some food, and then walked together to the playground. The Quidditch stands were empty, with almost no one, not even the arena. But she did see Colin wildly shooting around with his camera in hand. 3 people were sitting together, and the morning mist on the playground had not completely dissipated. In no time, Harry and the other team members walked out wearing a jersey. It looks like training is about to begin again. Ron was surprised by the intensity of Quidditch training, as Harry set off before dawn. You haven't finished practicing yet. Haven't finished practicing yet. No. Haven't started yet. Harry shook his head and said, Wood has been talking about tactics for hours, and I'm almost starving. Do you want some food? Ginny handed out the bread in her hand. She didn't have much appetite. He was a bit tempted, but Wood was not going to give him time to eat. Harry kicked his 2 feet and rode his light-wheel 2000 into the sky. But the training was interrupted almost before it started. Because Colin seemed to be crazy, holding up his camera and shooting at them made Wood very unhappy. He suspected that this kid was a spy sent by Slytherin to obtain intelligence on their new tactics. Slytherin doesn't need any spies at all, George said helplessly. How do you know? Because they came by themselves. A few people wearing green robes walked into the court, each holding a flying broom. It's their old rival Slytherin's team. Wood flew down angrily, and the 2 teams immediately erupted with a strong smell of gunpowder. What's going on? Hermione's slightly worried voice called Ginny back from her trance. What's wrong? They're arguing. Go and take a look. Ron immediately jumped down. He thought that if there really was a conflict, he couldn't stand idly by. As they rushed down in a frenzy, Ron and Hermione looked in surprise at the platinum-haired man in Slytherin's team. Draco Malfoy. Ginny certainly knows him too. During the summer vacation, it was his father and his own father who had a fight at the Lycan bookstore. Continue to collect, wish you all a happy weekend, haha.